Close your eyes. I want you to imagine a split screen. On the left side, you see the smoke rising from the marble columns of Rome in the year 476. The air smells of unwashed bodies, burning grain, and fear. The greatest city in the history of the world is being dismantled brick by a horde of barbarians who were once hired to protect it. On the right side of the screen, I want you to see Washington, D.C. in the year 2026. The Capitol dome gleams white in the sun, but the streets below are lined with tent cities. The printing presses at the Bureau of Engraving are running so hot they are vibrating the floorboards. The politicians inside are arguing about gender pronouns while the interest payments on the national debt consume the entire tax revenue of the nation. The images blur together. The toga becomes the business suit. The debased silver denarius becomes the digital dollar. The Praetorian Guard becomes the intelligence community. And the senile, mad emperors of the late Roman period become the geriatric leadership of the American decline. You're not looking at two different civilizations. You're looking at the same organism at the same stage of its life cycle. You're looking at the reflection in the mirror. This is the twilight of the empire. We have been raised on a diet of propaganda called American exceptionalism. We are told that the United States is different, that we are immune to the laws of history, that we are the shining city on the hill that will last forever. This is a lie. It is a seductive, comforting lie designed to keep you sleeping while the house burns down around you. The truth is that empires are not static structures made of stone and law. They are biological entities. They are born. They struggle in their infancy. They grow strong and muscular in their youth. They become fat, lazy, and corrupt in their middle age. And finally, they become senile, weak, and vulnerable in their old age. Then they die. This is not a political opinion. This is biology. And America is currently lying in the hospice ward, hooked up to a morphine drip called quantitative easing, waiting for the flat line. There is a mathematical formula for this death. It was discovered by a British historian named Sir John Glubb. He studied the life cycles of the world's greatest empires over the last 3,000 years, the Assyrians, the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, the Ottomans, the British. He found a terrifying correlation. The average lifespan of a great superpower is almost exactly 250 years. It is a clock that ticks with ruthless precision. Now, let us do the math. The United States declared its independence in 1776. Add 250 years to that date. What do you get? 2026. We are not approaching the deadline. We are standing on it. The alarm is ringing. The sand in the hourglass has run out. The Roman algorithm has executed its final loop, and the result is systemic collapse. Before we go any further into the anatomy of this corpse, I need to warn you. The algorithms that control this platform are programmed to suppress this kind of content. They want you watching cat videos and celebrity gossip. They want you distracted. They do not want you to realize that you are living through the fall of Rome in real time. If you want to see the truth behind the curtain, you need to fight the suppression. Subscribe to the channel and like this video right now. Do it to signal to the machine that you are awake. Leave a comment below with the word empire to mark your presence among the historians of the apocalypse. Now, let us look at the symptoms of the disease. The parallels between the fall of Rome and the trajectory of the United States are so precise they are almost spooky. Rome did not fall in a day. It rotted from the inside for decades. The first symptom was the destruction of the middle class. In the early days of the Roman Republic, the backbone of the state was the citizen farmer. He owned his land. He fought in the legions. He had a stake in the future. But as the empire grew, the elites, the patricians, began to buy up all the land. They replaced the citizen farmers with slave labor imported from foreign conquests. The middle class was crushed. They flooded into the cities, becoming a dependent, angry mob that lived on government handouts. Look at America today. The middle class is being eviscerated. The small business owner is being crushed by regulation and corporate monopolies. The homeowner is being replaced by the renter, paying tribute to BlackRock and Vanguard. The manufacturing jobs have been shipped overseas to slave labor in China, just as Rome used slave labor from Gaul. The independent citizen is becoming the dependent consumer, living on stimulus checks, food stamps, and government subsidies. We have recreated the Roman mob, and we are terrified of it. The second symptom was the loss of civic virtue among the elite. In the early days, Roman leaders led from the front. They died in battle. They sacrificed their wealth for the state. By the end, the Roman elite was a cesspool of hedonism, corruption, and narcissism. They cared only about their villas, their orgies, and their personal power. They viewed the state not as a sacred trust, but as a loot box to be raided. Look at Washington, D.C. Do you see statesmen? Or do you see insider traders? Do you see leaders who would die for their country? Or do you see career politicians who enter office with a modest salary and leave with a net worth of $50 million? We have a ruling class that despises the population it governs. They live in gated communities, protected by private security, while they defund the police for the plebeians. They lecture you on carbon footprints while flying in private jets. This is not a government. It is a looting operation. It is the final stage of a parasite that has consumed the host and is now looking for a way to exit before the body goes cold. The third symptom, and the most fatal, was the overextension of the military. Rome tried to police the known world. They had legions in Britain, in Germany, in Africa, in the Middle East. The cost of maintaining this global garrison bankrupted the treasury. They could not tax the citizens enough to pay for the wars, so they began to debase the currency. They mixed copper into the silver coins. They stole the wealth of the future to pay for the security of the present. America has 800 military bases in more than 70 countries. We are the global policemen. We are fighting proxy wars in Ukraine, in the Middle East, in the Pacific. We are spending nearly $1 trillion a year on defense, while our bridges crumble and our veterans sleep under them. We cannot afford this empire. We are bankrupt. But we cannot stop because the moment the legions come home, the illusion of power shatters. So we print. We print the money to pay the soldiers, just as Rome clipped the coins. And in doing so, we destroy the very thing we're trying to defend, the value of our labour and our lives. The Roman algorithm is running its course. It is a recursive function of decay. Bad decisions lead to debt. Debt leads to printing. Printing leads to inflation. Inflation leads to social unrest. Social unrest leads to authoritarianism, and authoritarianism leads to collapse. We are currently at the stage of inflation and social unrest. The next step is the crackdown. The Caesars are coming. They will promise to restore order. They will promise to make Rome great again. But they will only oversee the funeral. You are living in a time loop. The names have changed. The technology has changed. We have iPhones instead of wax tablets. We have nuclear missiles instead of catapults. But the human operating system has not changed. Greed is still greed, hubris is still hubris, and the laws of economic gravity still apply. The twilight of the empire is not a prediction. It is an observation. The sun is setting on the American century. The shadows are getting long, and the cold wind of the Dark Ages is starting to blow. Let us leave the broad sweep of history and enter the autopsy room. We are going to cut open the heart of the empire. In any civilization, the heart is the currency. It pumps value through the veins of commerce. It keeps the organs of industry alive. When the heart fails, the patient dies. It is that simple. And the pathology report for the American dollar looks identical to the report for the Roman denarius. It is a case study in slow, deliberate suicidal poisoning. In the golden age of Rome, the denarius was a beautiful coin. It was pure silver. It had weight. It had substance. You could hold it in your hand and feel the labour it represented. A soldier was paid 225 denarii a year. It was enough to buy a small farm, raise a family, and retire with dignity. The currency was honest because the empire was honest. It produced more than it consumed. But then came the spending, the bread and circuses, the endless wars, the corruption. The emperors needed more money than they could collect in taxes. So Nero, the fiddler who burned his own city, had a brilliant idea. He ordered the mint to collect the silver coins, melt them down, and mix in 10% copper. He minted the new coins with the same face value but with less silver. It was free money. The state could pay its bills with lighter coins. It worked, for a while. But the addiction to free money is like the addiction to heroin. You always need a bigger dose to get the same high. The next emperor, Trajan, reduced the silver content to 85%. Marcus Aurelius took it down to 75%. By the time of Gallienus, in the late 3rd century, the coin was barely 5% silver. It was a copper slug with a thin wash of silver on top that rubbed off after a week. Finally, by the end of the empire, the denarius contained 0.02% silver. It was worthless. It was trash. The soldiers refused to accept it. They demanded payment in gold, or land, or salt. The economy collapsed into barter. Trade stopped. The Dark Ages began. Now look at the dollar in your pocket. Or rather, the digits on your banking app. In 1913, the Federal Reserve was created. At that time, $20 could buy you an ounce of gold. The dollar was a certificate of deposit for real physical wealth. Then, in 1933, Roosevelt confiscated the gold. In 1971, Nixon closed the gold window completely. He severed the tie between the paper dollar and the physical world. He turned the dollar into the modern denarius A fiat currency, backed by nothing but faith and credit. Since the creation of the Federal Reserve, the US dollar has lost 98% of its purchasing power. 98%. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is official government data. A dollar today buys what 2 pennies bought in 1913. We have done exactly what Rome did. We haven't clipped the edges of coins because we don't use coins. We use a keyboard. We type zeros into a computer at the Eccles building. But the mechanism of theft is identical. When the government prints $3 trillion to fund a stimulus package, they are pouring copper into the silver. They are diluting your labour. Imagine you worked for 40 hours to earn a paycheck. That paycheck represents a stored unit of your life force, your time, your energy. When the Fed prints $1 trillion new dollars out of thin air, they are stealing a fraction of that life force. They are watering down the soup. You still have the same number of dollars, but the nutritional value of each dollar, what it can actually buy, has been drained away. This is why you feel like you're running on a treadmill that keeps speeding up. You're working harder than your grandfather did. You're more productive. You have better technology. Yet he could support a family of 5, buy a house and a car on a single factory income. You need 2 incomes just to pay the rent. Why? Because he was paid in silver, and you are paid in copper. He was paid in a currency that held its value. You are paid in a currency that is melting like an ice cube in your hand. The Roman algorithm dictates that once the debasement starts, it cannot stop. It accelerates exponentially. In the final stages of Rome, inflation ran so hot that prices doubled every few weeks. We are seeing the early tremors of this now. The price of eggs, the price of insurance, the price of housing. The government tells you inflation is transitory or 3%. This is a lie. If you calculate inflation using the same metrics we used in 1980 before they changed the formula to hide the truth, real inflation is running at 10 to 15%. We are already in the double-digit debasement phase. The scary part is the debt. Rome didn't have a bond market. We do. We have $35 trillion of debt. The interest on this debt is mathematically unpayable with hard dollars. The only way the US government can avoid default is to print the money to pay the interest. This creates a doom loop. They print to pay debt, inflation rises, interest rates rise, debt payments rise, they print more. It is a death spiral. It is the financial equivalent of a star collapsing into a black hole. And just like the Roman legions who eventually refused the copper coins, the world is starting to refuse the dollar. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, are building a new payment system backed by gold and commodities. They are the soldiers throwing the worthless denarius back in the emperor's face. They are saying, we want real money. The petrodollar agreement with Saudi Arabia has ended. The global demand for US debt is evaporating. When the world stops accepting our paper, the game ends. All those trillions of dollars that are currently floating overseas will come rushing back home, chasing real assets in the domestic economy. This will trigger the hyperinflationary event that marks the death of the currency. It happened in Rome. It happened in Weimar Germany. It happened in Zimbabwe. It happened in Venezuela. And the laws of mathematics do not care that we have nuclear aircraft carriers. The math says we are next. The currency is the blood, and our blood is septic. It is poisoned by debt and diluted by the printing press. The patient is pale, the extremities are cold, the fever is rising, and the doctors at the Federal Reserve are just preparing another injection of the very poison that caused the sickness in the first place. Now that we have diagnosed the poisoned blood, the currency, let us examine the brain. Why doesn't the patient scream? Why aren't there riots in the streets every single day? Why do Americans watch their country burn and then scroll to the next TikTok video? The answer lies in the most successful technology of social control ever invented by the Romans and perfected by the Americans, panem et circenses, bread and circuses. Juvenal, the Roman satirist, wrote, "The people that once bestowed commands, consulships, legions and all else, now meddles no more and longs eagerly for just 2 things, bread and circuses." He was describing a population that had been lobotomized by free food and violent entertainment. The Roman elite knew that a hungry mob is dangerous, but a full, entertained mob is docile. So they gave them the annona, the daily grain dole, free bread for every citizen in Rome, and they gave them the games, the Colosseum, chariot races, gladiator fights, blood, sand, and spectacle. It kept the adrenaline high and the critical thinking low. Fast forward to 2026. We have built a digital Colosseum that fits in your pocket. It is called the smartphone. The algorithm is the new gladiator fight. It feeds you a constant stream of outrage, dopamine, sex, and violence. It is designed to keep your brain in a state of constant low-level stimulation. You're too busy arguing about the latest celebrity scandal to notice that your currency is being destroyed. You're too busy binge-watching Netflix to notice that your rights are being stripped away. The screen is the pacifier for a society that has regressed into infancy. And the bread, we have that too. We call it stimulus. We call it UB Universal Basic Income. We call it EBT. During the pandemic, the government discovered a terrifying truth. They can buy your compliance. They sent out checks for $1,200, and the population accepted house arrest without a fight. They realized that if you give people just enough money to survive, they will let you take everything else. They will trade their liberty for a direct deposit. This is the physiological mechanism of addiction. The state has become the dealer. The population has become the junkie. A junkie does not revolt against his dealer. He protects him. He needs him. If the dealer goes to jail, the supply stops. So the American public, addicted to cheap credit and government handouts, terrifies itself into submission. If the system crashes, who will pay my benefits? Who will pay my pension? The fear of withdrawal keeps the addict loyal to the poison. The Roman games served another purpose. They desensitized the people to violence and death. Watching men butcher each other for sport made the Romans cruel and indifferent. Look at our culture today. We are saturated with violence. In movies, in video games, on the news. We watch wars unfold on Twitter like they are sports matches. We cheer for our side to drop bombs on their side. We have lost the capacity for empathy. We have become spectators in our own destruction. The scary part is that this distraction mechanism is finite. In Rome, the cost of the bread and circuses eventually became too high. The treasury ran dry. The grain ships from Egypt stopped coming. And when the free food stopped, the mob burned the city. We are approaching that limit. The US debt interest is crowding out all other spending. Soon, the government will have to choose, pay the bondholders or pay the welfare checks, pay for the military or pay for social security. When they can no longer afford the bread, the circuses will stop working. A hungry man does not care about the Super Bowl. A mother who cannot buy milk does not care about the Met Gala. When the distraction fails, reality comes crashing back with the force of a sledgehammer. The illusion of stability will shatter in 24 hours. The docile, screen-addicted herd will transform instantly into a panicked stampede. We are living in a society of high dopamine, low serotonin, high excitement, low happiness, high stimulation, low meaning. This is the brain chemistry of a dying civilization. We are amusing ourselves to death, just as Neil Postman predicted. We are scrolling through the apocalypse. We are liking and subscribing to our own funeral. The elites know this. They are counting on it. They are betting that you will stay glued to your screen until the very end. They are betting that you will choose the blue pill, the comfortable lie over the red pill of hard reality. They are building the metaverse so you can have a digital house when you can't afford a real one. They are giving you digital food for your digital avatar while your physical body starves. It is the ultimate dissociation. But biology is stubborn. You cannot eat digital bread. You cannot live in a digital house. Eventually, the physical world demands to be heard. The Roman algorithm says that the phase of bread and circuses is the final anesthetic before the surgery, and the surgery is amputation. The empire is about to lose its limbs. Are you ready to wake up from the anesthesia? Or will you keep watching the show until the lights go out forever? We have examined the mirror, the currency, and the distraction. Now we must look at the end. How does the story actually finish? When does the screen go black? The popular image of the fall of Rome is a sudden violent event, barbarians storming the gates, fire, screams, a single day of reckoning. But history tells a different, more terrifying story. Rome didn't fall because Odoacer marched in with an army. Rome fell because Odoacer was already there. He was a Roman general. His troops were federati mercenaries paid by Rome to guard the borders. The barbarians were not outside the gate. They were manning the gate. The final stage of the Roman algorithm is the outsourcing of the state itself. When an empire becomes too weak to do its own work, it hires foreigners to do it. It hires foreign soldiers to fight its wars. It hires foreign workers to build its roads. It borrows foreign money to pay its bills. It outsources its manufacturing, its energy production, and its security. The shell of the empire remains, but the living organism inside has been replaced by something else. Look at America in 2026. Who holds our debt? Foreign nations. Who manufactures our medicine? China. Who builds our chips? Taiwan. Who fights our wars? Private military contractors and proxy armies. We have hollowed out the nation. We have sold the organs to pay for the painkillers. The barbarians are not invaders in longboats. They are the creditors. They are the supply chain managers. They are the people who hold the kill switch on our economy. The collapse, when it comes, will not look like an invasion. It will look like a service-denied error message. One day, the ships from China will stop docking. The antibiotics will run out at CVS. The spare parts for the power grid will not arrive. The foreign buyers of US Treasury bonds will simply stop bidding. And in that moment, the empire ceases to function. It is a kinetic seizure. The body is still there, but the nervous system has been severed. The year 2026 is the mathematical limit. The interest on the debt becomes the single largest line item in the budget, surpassing Social Security. The government will have to print so much money to cover it that the dollar will enter the terminal phase of hyperinflation. At that point, the federati, the states, the corporations, the local power centers will stop listening to Washington. We will see the fracturing of the United States. This is exactly what happened to Rome. The central authority collapsed, and the empire broke into local fiefdoms. The Dark Ages were actually a time of radical decentralization. People stopped looking to Rome for protection and started looking to their local warlord, their local baron, their local community. We are heading toward American feudalism. The federal government will remain in DC, issuing orders that nobody follows, while real power shifts to the governors, to the sheriffs, and to the corporate city-states run by the likes of Musk and Bezos. So, what do you do when the empire falls? Do you stand in the forum and cry? No. You become a prepper of the Dark Age. You realize that the state can no longer protect you. You realize that the currency can no longer store your labor. You have to become your own emperor. You have to build your own Rome on a microscale. First, you need a hard money shield. Gold and silver were the only things that survived the fall of Rome. A gold coin from the reign of Augustus still buys a suit of clothes today, 2,000 years later. The denarius is dust. The dollar will be dust. Bitcoin, gold, land. These are the arcs that carry wealth across the flood of history. Second, you need a tribe. The lone wolf dies. The pack survives. In the fracturing of America, your neighbors are your new countrymen. Your local community is your new social security. You need to build alliances now before the crisis hits. Who can fix a generator? Who can grow food? Who has medical skills? This is the new currency of the post-imperial world. Third, you need to unplug from the matrix. Stop watching the circuses. Stop eating the poisoned bread. Reclaim your attention. Reclaim your health. The system wants you weak, fat, and distracted. Rebellion begins with physical and mental sovereignty. If you can grow your own food, you are dangerous. If you can think for yourself, you're a revolutionary. The twilight of the empire is not the end of the world. It is the end of their world. It is the end of the centralized, corrupt, debt-based parasite that has been feeding on us for a century. The fall of Rome was a disaster for the Roman elite, but for the average person in the provinces it was often a liberation. The taxes stopped. The wars stopped. Life became harder, but it became real again. The sun is setting on the American empire. The long night is coming. But remember, the stars only shine when it's dark. This is your chance to build something new in the ruins of the old. Do not be afraid of the collapse. Be afraid of clinging to a corpse. Let Rome fall, and let the new world be born. This is the prophet of financial apocalypse. The history lesson is over. The test is about to begin.